Now, do you remember the days of the old brick phone? Look at that. They were indestructible, weren't they? The days before social media. Well, it's something that children today never got to experience, of course. But due to the campaign group, Smartphone Free Childhood, 60 schools in North London are now changing their policies. Anna O'Neill can explain all.
It's between this or no smartphone at all for many London parents. This campaign is not just about no smartphones in schools, it's about parents in those schools signing up to a pledge to not give their children smartphones at all until they're 14 and to not allow them to have access to social media till they're 16. Around a quarter of 5 to 7-year-olds in the UK have a smartphone, and that could lead to them accessing potentially harmful social media, and that could damage their mental health. So this campaign aims to change that. I've been asking parents in North London this morning what they think.
It's something that could work if lots of people get behind it and kind of almost counter the peer pressure.
My son is 11, he has a phone. He is able to call his grandparents, his cousins.
It's a smartphone.
It's a smartphone, but he doesn't have social media.
I don't know whether an outright ban is the way forward or even feasible, knowing what I know about teenagers.
It's so difficult because I also would quite like them to have maps on their phone and City Mapper, but just not any of the other stuff, because otherwise I know they'll be WhatsApping their mates all evening. Having said that, that's what I do. So if it's good enough for me, why can't I let my kids do that?
One mum says there's an obvious alternative to this, the brick phone.
We have simple phones that are available for children to use that can give us the peace of mind we want. What I'm going to do at my school, following some others, is hold a brick phone fair, and I will have the actual devices on hand, and I'll talk to parents about the importance of getting a no data SIM card that doesn't have access to the internet, so that they can look and choose and get some idea of what's out there. I really think we need to change the norms around this and make it clear that we need to delay smartphone use for children.
Of course, the success of this campaign will depend on large numbers of parents signing up to this pledge and sticking to it.
Anna O'Neill there. Well, I'm joined now by Nova Eden, who's from Smartphone Free Childhood, the campaign, and she's a parent as well. And I'm also joined by Lawrence Foley, who's CEO of Future Academies, which has schools across London and Hertfordshire. Welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us. So if we start with you, Nova, first of all, do your children have their own phones, and if so, are they smartphones?
I made the mistake of giving my eldest son a phone, and I think that parents have been put into an impossible position by tech companies because we all feel pressured to conform to the social norms of giving our child a smartphone. I realised very quickly I made a mistake, and I'm determined to not make the same mistake again for my two younger children.
I suppose tech companies quite often say they put measures in place and they have controls in there, parental controls, and children have to say that they're over 13 before joining certain apps. That is what a lot of tech giants say. But when you say you made a mistake, Nova, what do you mean?
I think I realised very quickly how addictive these phones are for children in particular. And there's now a lot of research to show that there are rising levels of anxiety, depression, self-harm and sadly suicides in young children that have been related to smartphone use and social media use at a young age.
Well, if we speak to Lawrence now, let's bring Lawrence in, because Lawrence, your schools already have a phones-free policy. We heard some of the reasons there that Nova feels that this should be brought in. What was the reason for you bringing it into your schools?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, look, in many ways, there's not really a great deal of difference in our phone policy now to what we had previously. I think what we have done over the course of the past few years is to gradually tighten those policies. But clearly, a large amount of the sort of issues that we deal with around behaviour and around young people's mental health crises, as Nova said, actually originates on smartphones. And so, we kind of feel like the tide is changing and the tide is turning. And so as a consequence of that, we feel able to tighten up those policies around smartphone usage in school. But the thing that worries us more than that actually is what pupils are doing outside of school. And so, we're extremely relieved and heartened to hear that charities like Smartphone Free Childhood exist to try to persuade parents really and give them the kind of information they need around the damages that these things can cause.
And Lawrence, when you say the tide has changed, which has made it easier for you to bring in those changes, what do you mean, that parents are less resistant? What's changed?
Yeah, I think there's a more public debate now about the fact that smartphones clearly are damaging to young people. I mean, I think we all kind of felt in our guts that there were issues around the kind of safety of allowing young people unfettered access to the internet. And I think the research now is supporting that. And so there's an evidence base underneath it. And the idea that you might hold off giving your child a smartphone for as long as possible is, I think, increasingly becoming a mainstream idea.
Nova, I suppose at some point it's inevitable that a child will get a smartphone, and we can't really live life without it in the world we're in. So don't you think it's more about educating them to use it safely and responsibly? Because they're going to have to make that leap at some point, aren't they?
I think we're not saying never, we're saying not yet. I think this is about the tragedy of modern childhood. I think children don't need smartphones. I think they need a childhood. And it's more than what's just happening between the four walls of schools. It's about keeping these children safe and not giving the whole world access to them when they have the internet in their pockets for 12 hours a day.
Well, Lawrence mentioned, peer pressure and other children potentially doing. Is that something that you're concerned about, in that even if children are at a school where this policy is in force, what about their other friends? Won't there be a feeling of missing out?
I think what we have established now from our campaign is that parents feel much more confident in delaying smartphones and social media when we have the support of the schools telling us that we all want to work towards having a smartphone-free childhood. So in the schools where we've seen them implementing the policies, we know that the parent communities are coming together and being proactive, and they are implementing parent pledges to delay smartphones until at least 14 and delay giving children access to at least 16.
And I'll just give Lawrence the final thought there. What were some of the challenges you found? I mean, was there much opposition?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always opposition to questions around phone usage, and that primarily kind of centres around the issue of safety and parents understandably wanting to have a way of contacting their kids when they're on the way to and from school. And just like, you've outlined at the kind of, the video at the beginning there is a way through that, which is through brick phones. Parents can still choose to give those to their children. Unfortunately, I think, this isn't a school discipline issue anymore. The issue around smartphones is fast becoming a public health problem. And so, there is pushback on the gates from parents who feel that this is overbearing.
But as you said, as you mentioned earlier, the tide seems to be changing a bit as well. Lawrence, thank you so much. And Nova, thank you as well for coming into the studio.
Very much.
Thank you both.